like we can have a quick debate about like episodic versus like kind of like serialized. Like I feel like that's part of the problem is that like they can introduce a lot of sort of kind of like interesting concepts or interesting sort of like ideas or even like interesting potential like story plots that could, you know, be fleshed out over sort of a couple episodes in a season. But it feels like because it's like episodic, and especially with this where they only have like 25 minutes to sort of, you know, tell the story that they want to tell in the episode, is that it then feels like a lot of things doesn't really lead to anything. And then it feels almost like what's the point and what's maybe like the ultimate payoff? You know, of course you can have like your kind of like overriding themes and maybe like your like main hero goes through an eventual journey throughout some of the whole series whilst things are just like happening. But then it just like, to me, it just kind of sometimes feels a little bit too disjointed and it just feels like nothing really like, I mean, it's episodic, nothing really connects well.
So here's my thing about episodic versus serialized. I think serialization is a crutch. A lot of the times, it just means we get a 2-hour movie that gets stretched out to 6 hours. Like virtually every Netflix or other streaming series in the last 7-8 years could be described as that, right? And that goes back all the way back to Stranger Things and the first Daredevil series, where you say, okay, the overall plot is pretty cool, and there's some good episodes here, especially the beginning and the end. But in the middle, you could easily cut 2 or 3 episodes. And that just incentivizes padded out storytelling. Like every medium has this. Like people used to write for advertisers and for the ad break with like story beats lined up with like so that the payoff comes after the next ad break and whatever. But I feel like back then people had figured out how to tell good stories around the limitations of the medium. And here it's just the medium ruining the story. And by medium, I mean streaming. Right, because that has led to the binging model, and that has led to this whole idea that it's high engagement and you watch the entire thing all the way through, and it's all about the shock moments, and it's all about keeping up suspense at maximum throughout the entire time. And all of that has been to the detriment of good stories. I think if you have a story that requires that format, then you should do that. And if you have a story that is more episodic, if it's like, this is the case of the week, or the monster of the week, or the mystery of the week, then it should be more episodic. And I also think the best episodic shows have like a loose continuity between them, where things that happen in one episode stay true in the next episodes. And it may not matter in the next episode, but it might matter 2 seasons from now or 5 episodes from now or something. I've got my examples of this. Stargate was amazing at this, right? Where they would bring back an artifact from our planet, and then 3 seasons later, they used it to solve a problem, because the writers had like a list of stuff that was true in the world. And but you could largely view the episodes out of order. But if you watch them in order, you can get that payoff. Yeah. So episodic does not mean it's all just formula or something like that, right? Or that it can't be complex or whatever. I think these episodes actually are really well written for the most part in terms of delivering a story in 25 minutes. And I think having that challenge and not having to draw it out endlessly, but rather having to have a beginning, middle, and end in this tight time frame causes people to think very hard, okay, what's important and how do we best convey this information? How do we do setup and payoff in a timely manner and all of these things? And the end result is really enjoyable television for me. I've been waiting like over a decade for decent episodic storytelling, because the fashion has been for so long that it has to be serialized. And so for somebody to come along and just make a show where some episodes are not so great and some are pretty good, and I can just pick out the good ones. Like if I watch this again, I'm watching 3 or 4 episodes. I'm not watching the entire thing. Yeah, that's fine. I don't have to sit through the bad stuff to get to the good stuff.
But then you have to sit for the bad stuff initially to find the good stuff, which is the problem.
But that's true for everything, right? You don't know ahead of time what's good. But at the same time, I watch a lot of stuff where I end up thinking it's not worth it. But then I remember where it wasn't worth it, and I don't watch that again. But if I have to sit through 3 bad seasons to get to an amazing payoff in a serialized show, then I can't watch the good seasons because I don't have the patience for the bad seasons.
Yeah.
But here I can say, okay, episodes 7 and 9 are great, so I'm going to watch those again. And I'm not going to miss anything.
I feel like in terms of like the serialized things, I feel like the main issue, like even though I prefer like things kind of like building on top of something of what's come before in terms of like a continued storytelling and like, you know, kind of like one episode kind of like leading to another and this, that, and the other.
I mean, I'm not saying episodic is the way to go. I'm just saying for some formats it's the way to go.
Yeah.
And I want there to be a mix.
Yeah.
When for the last 10, 15 years, it's just been taboo. Like you can't do it.
Yeah. I think
because there were a couple of serialized shows 20 years ago that did well, and then everybody believed that episodic is a lower form of storytelling. I also think that good episodic television has this overarching arc, where especially often it would be beginning of the season, end of the season, and then a couple of milestones, and then in between you have the interchangeable episodes. And so if you watch the entire season in sequence, you do get an ongoing story, but it's not every minute of every episode. But because they have the freedom to experiment and just drop stuff that doesn't work, I think that allows them to be better and become better.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement that essentially there's just horses for courses. Like there's sort of certain stories that work well over as a movie, certain stories work well as like a series and stuff like that. And it's just like about the writers and the creators finding the right medium for the stories that they need to tell, basically.